Bravely Default was an amazing JRPG on the 3DS, but you never hear about its sequel, Bravely Second Endlayer. Why is that? Is it bad, forgotten, or just overshadowed? Let's talk about it. JRPGs are fantastic, aren't they? We've played all the heavy hitters, and when one comes out, we all want a sequel or a follow-up. Bravely Default was one of those amazing games, so when the follow-up, Bravely Second Endlayer, came out, I was excited for it, but sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that was looking forward to it. In this video, I'm diving into Bravely Second Endlayer, the overlooked follow-up that had huge expectations. I'll cover the combat, story, new mechanics, and why this game might actually deserve a second chance, as well as where it fell short. I picked this up years ago, and while I loved it at launch, I wanted to play through it again to get a fresh thought on it over 10 years later. So if you've played it or skipped it entirely, let me know in the comments and let's get a discussion going. Let's dive into the world of Luxendark one more time and figure out if this lost 3DS RPG was worth the journey. Bravely Default Where the Fairy Flies felt like lightning in a bottle. A surprise 3DS JRPG that mixed Final Fantasy nostalgia with modern elements. It had charm, depth, and a battle system that pulled you in. But with that all being said, it wasn't perfect. In particular, it stumbled hard in the late game with repetition, pacing issues, and a story that felt a bit too familiar, leading it to not stand out. Not to mention the last quarter of the game that is constantly getting criticized. Bravely Second Endlayer doesn't pretend to invent anything. Instead, it tries to course correct. It picks up 2.5 years later after the first game, and you can feel that time in the game's design. The pacing is tighter, the world feels more alive, and the game respects your time more, especially in early and mid-game, which are far less bloated. From a mechanical standpoint, the Bravely Default combat system returns, but with refinements. Chain battles, the whole My Set job loadout, and faster animations all contribute to a smoother, more dynamic experience. It's like the devs looked at player feedback and said, okay, we hear you, and we're listening. Story-wise, it's less grim and more playful, which can be a little bit hit or miss depending on your taste. But there's more world building, way better foreshadowing, and character moments that feel earned instead of forced. Idea especially shines this time around. Her arc is incredibly heartfelt and will just put a smile on your face. And perhaps most importantly, that dreaded time loop structure of the first game. It's gone. While Bravely Second still has some familiar narrative tricks up its sleeve, it avoids that same feeling of burnout and repetition. And honestly, that's a win in everybody's book. So no, Bravely Second isn't revolutionary, but it's smarter, more confident, and clearly built on the lessons of its predecessor. It doesn't just really follow in the footsteps of Bravely Default, but it refines them. And for fans of the original, that's more than enough reason to give it a second look. As I've mentioned numerous times on this channel, I absolutely adore turn-based combat and job systems. Thankfully, like the first game, Bravely Second Endlayer excels at both aspects. If you've played Bravely Default, you already know what to expect. Bravely Default is one of the best twists on classic turn-based combat in years. Default lets you guard and store up actions, while Brave lets you spend multiple turns at once. It's kind of a high-risk, high-reward system, but it adds an incredible amount of strategy to the basic turn-based structure. You have the option to either blow through combat quickly by having each of your party members use 4 turns all at once, risking a turn deficit if you don't finish the battle, or you can spend the first few turns guarding, waiting for the perfect opportunity for maximum damage, while also protecting yourself from being defenseless once you recover. But Bravely Second takes the system and adds a few new features. Newly introduced are chain battles. If you defeat all enemies in one turn. If you happen to defeat them in one turn, you can fight again immediately for boosted rewards. And if you can perfect the Brave Point management, you can get ridiculous amounts of experience. For example, you can turn 1,400 experience to 20,000, 40,000, or even 100,000 experience points, and in the process increasing your job points and money payouts as well. On the plus side, this cuts back on grinding. However, if you're anything like me, it makes it incredibly easy to max out your levels, and you'll end up doing it way before you should. I actually maxed out my level from about 45 to 99 in about an hour to an hour and a half time. As broken as it is, it's kind of fun. Like other JRPGs with job systems, this is where the best part is. Bravely Second gives you 30 job classes to mix and match, and they are incredibly creative. Sure, you have your tried and true classes like Black Mage, Knight, and White Mage, but then you get new jobs like Charioteer, who can equip up to 4 weapons in place of armor, or Catmancer, which uses cats to unleash monster abilities. It's like a blue mage, but with more meow. Yes, it's ridiculous, but also somehow works. Though I'm not exactly the biggest fan of using expendable items to use certain abilities. So Bravely Second practically begs you to experiment with different combinations of jobs. You can mix and match a primary job with a secondary skill set. And some of the combos are insane. Want a performer that uses katanas? Go for it. A time mage that can use pirate attack skills? Why not? The level of customization here is what makes the green meaningful and not just mandatory. You can pick and choose what you want to level up. Later in the game, you unlock even more advanced jobs, and that's when things really get busted, and that's my favorite part of job systems. Creating combinations that make battles laughably easy. Once you understand how jobs interact with passive abilities as well as equipment setups, you can create some completely broken party builds that feel earned and not just handed to you. My suggestion, if you play Bravely Second, or really any Bravely game, I guess it would extend to any game with a job system, just experiment on your own and don't look up a guide for best job combos. The most rewarding part is experimenting and finding what works and what doesn't work in each situation. There's also a nice balance between challenge and power. Boss fights are tough enough to make you rethink your setup, and enemies hit hard if you're not careful. If you're unable to beat a boss, chances are you just need to change your jobs and skills around to give you the edge in that boss fight. And really, that's what a great RPG combat system is all about. However, if, like I said earlier, you power level a little bit too early, most of the bosses will just be completely simple. Bravely Second also brings back the auto battle system from Bravely Default. However, now you can save up to 3 different auto battle loadouts and use them as required. It's really helpful when you want to grind with minimal attention or just deal with regular combat without paying full attention. And lastly, there's a fast forward in battle as well. You can increase combat speed by up to ×4. Coupled with the auto battle system, this makes combat fly by in a breeze. So yeah, if you love job systems like in Final Fantasy V, Octopath Traveler, or Tactics Ogre, Bravely Second delivers. It's deep, it's flexible, and it's one of the most satisfying parts of the entire game. Now, let's talk about the story and characters, because if you've played Bravely Default, you know this series doesn't shy away from getting weird, honestly a little bit meta, and incredibly emotional. Bravely Second takes a slightly different tone though. It's lighter, it's more self-aware, and surprisingly funny without losing the weight of the seriousness of the story. The story of Bravely Second picks up 2.5 years after the first game. Agnes is now a Hopess, and she's kidnapped immediately. That kicks off your main quest. You play as Jenny Olja, a noble who takes his duty very seriously. And yes, he's kind of a dork, but he's a lovable dork. He's your classic by-the-book hero who kinda has a lot of character development as the game goes on. Joining him from the original Bravely Default are Adia Lee and Tiz Arior, and then you have a new character, Magnolia Arch. Adia is still a total highlight. Her sarcasm, leadership, and personal growth make her feel even more fleshed out here. And her dynamic with you is honestly hilarious with the amount of times that she insults him. Then you have Magnolia. She's a moon warrior. Yes, the moon is a thing now. She's a bit of a wild card. She's like kind of stylish. She's mysterious. And also has a little bit of flirtiness to her. But her planet was almost destroyed by a ball, so she's kind of haunted by that as well. Her backstory gives the game its emotional center once you dig in, and seeing her warm up to the party over time is actually one of the most satisfying parts of Bravely Second. Bravely Second isn't trying to outdark the original game. Instead, it builds on its world with smarter lore, smoother pacing, and a more focused tone. But there's still twists, some predictable, some shocking, but they don't overstay their welcome, and crucially, that dreaded repetition of Bravely Default's last chapters are finally gone. The story moves forward, and not in circles. That being said, not every villain lands. The Kaiser Oblivion arc starts strong, but some of the late game antagonists feel like you're watching a cartoon on Saturday morning. That being said, unfortunately, most of the villains and asterisk holders in order to get new jobs are just copy pasted from the first game. I would have personally liked to have some new villains in the game. Still, it fits the more playful tone and there's enough emotional payoff, especially around you and Magnolia, to give the game some real feeling. Now, let's be real. As much as I love Bravely Second, it's not without any flaws. And depending on what you're looking for in a JRPG, some of these might be deal breakers. The biggest issue has to be the tone. Bravely Second swings way harder into comedy and self-awareness than the first game. As I mentioned before, there are moments that feel like a Saturday morning cartoon, complete with villain monologues and pun-filled side quests. It's kind of charming to a point, but if you were drawn to Bravely Default's darker, more dramatic atmosphere, this shift might feel a little bit jarring. The writing can also be uneven. There are brilliant emotional beats and surprising reveals, but there's some time buried under layers of goofy dialogue or filler. Seriously, this game has a high focus on food for the humor and a strange obsession with gravy. For example, more often than not, when they're getting all pumped up, normally they say, "This is my coup de grace," as in, "This is my final strike" or something. But instead of coup de grace, they call it the coup de gravy. Or they'll say, "Everything is coming up gravy." And I don't understand why they feel like they need to focus on the word gravy. It just gets cringe after a while. I'll never understand why they do it, but it kind of makes it stand out and you kind of get used to it after a while. With that being said, as I mentioned before, the pacing is better than the first game, but a few chapters still drag, especially if you're chasing every side quest or trying to max every job. And speaking of side quests, well, many of them are fun and creative. Some reuse old decision-making mechanics and bosses from the first game, so it feels a little bit outdated. Every side quest for a new job has you choosing between one villain or the other, and you have to take sides. Depending on what side you choose, you get that specific job, which sounds cool on paper until you realize later on in the game you're gonna have to replay parts just to collect everything. I'll be honest, when going through the second time around, I just skipped every cutscene when replaying the side quest to get the missing jobs. I can't talk about where Bravely Second falls short without talking about the music. Now, I have mentioned the music in Bravely Default numerous times. I adore the music in that game. Revo was absolutely amazing with Bravely Default. Everything hits perfectly and enhanced that experience tenfold. However, Bravely Second End Layer was composed by an entirely different composer, Ryo. Or Rio, I'm not sure. But even after looking, I don't think I know anything else that they've composed for. It doesn't look like any games. They have a band called Supercell, I think, and they've only done a few singles. I couldn't find any full albums. With that being said, while it doesn't quite match the quality of Bravely Default, Bravely Second's music is still quite good. The battle musics are great. I love the Kaiser Oblivion battle theme and the standard battle music, as well as the Asterisk battle theme, as well as the various town themes. Nothing in particular stands out as amazing, but I still really enjoyed it. Thankfully, it feels in theme with the Bravely series, so it isn't too jarring. Just know, if you're coming in expecting a soundtrack as amazing as Bravely Default, this won't fall short just slightly. Last thing, visually, the game pushes the 3DS hard, but you can tell the hardware's showing its age. Environments are pretty, but character models and animations feel stiff by today's standards. This is just another reason why Bravely Second deserves a remaster like the first game is getting on Switch 2. I'm honestly praying that it happens in due time because honestly, Bravely Second is great. So yeah, Bravely Second improves a lot, but it doesn't escape all of its predecessor's baggage. More confident, but not flawless. And depending on what you're hoping for, that shift in tone and focus could either be a welcome change or a really missed opportunity. So final thoughts on Bravely Second End Layer. This is a sequel that doesn't just repeat the past, it refines it. Bravely Second takes the brilliant combat and job system of the first game and polishes them to a shine, and delivers a smoother, more streamlined experience. Sure, it leans a little bit sillier than Bravely Default, and not every narrative beat hits as hard, but the charm, creativity, and heart behind this game are undeniable. It's a love letter to classic JRPGs with just enough modern flair to stand out on its own. If you're a fan of Bravely Default and haven't played this yet, it's absolutely worth the journey. And if you're new to the series, I'd say play the first game first, but know that Bravely Second takes what worked on it and runs with it. But that's just my take. I want to hear from you. Did you play Bravely Second? Were you surprised by the direction it took? Or maybe you're still on the fence about jumping in? Let's talk about it in the comments. I reply to as many of them as I can. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button. Seriously, it helps push the video to more JRPG fans like you. And hey, if this is your kind of content, why not subscribe? I cover a little bit of everything JRPG, all through the lens of a lifelong JRPG fan. This has been Shanky, thanks so much for watching, and until next week's video, have a wonderful day.